we will let us begin our Bhakti Vaibhava seminar for Srimad Bhagavatam. And first of all, let us chant our prayers. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharne Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Bastya Chadesha Tarne Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu-Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadha Shivas Adi Gaura Bhakta-vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Eva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Okay, devotees. So we are in the 11th chapter of the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. And last night we just finished the second section, which concludes with verse 27. And now we're going on to section C, the third section, which starts with verse 28 and goes on till the end of the chapter, which is verse 39. Right, so here we go, devotees. Well, we didn't read the verse. Did we read the verses? No, we didn't read. So first of all, let us read the verses. This section, of course, the chapter is all about Krishna entering Dwaraka, having come from Hastinapur. And this particular section is titled Krishna Enters the Palaces. Right, so here we go. Verse 28. After entering the house of his father, he was embraced by the mothers present, and the Lord offered his obeisances unto them by placing his head at their feet. The mothers were headed by Devaki, his real mother, so to speak, of course. Verse 29, the mothers, after embracing their son, sat him on their laps. Due to pure affection, milk sprang from their breasts. They were overwhelmed with delight, and the tears from their eyes wetted the Lord. That's all of them, not just Devaki, all of these ladies. Verse 30, thereafter the Lord entered his palaces, which were perfect to the fullest extent. His wives lived in them, and they numbered over 16,000. Verse 31, The queens of Lord Sri Krishna rejoiced within their minds to see their husband home after a long period abroad. The queens got up at once from their seats and meditations. As was socially customary, they covered their faces shyly and looked about coyly. Verse 32, the insuperable ecstasy was so strong that the queens who were shy first embraced the Lord in the innermost recesses of their hearts. Then they embraced him visually, and then they sent their sons to embrace him, which is equal to personal embracing. That's a comment from Prabhupada in the course of the translation. But, O chief amongst the Brigus, though they tried to restrain their feelings, they inadvertently shed tears. Verse 33. Although Lord Shri Krishna was constantly by their sides, as well as exclusively alone, his feet appeared to them to be newer and newer. The goddess of fortune, although by nature always restless and moving, could not quit the Lord's feet. So what woman can be detached from those feet, having once taken shelter of them? Right. Verse 34. The Lord was pacified after killing those kings who were burdensome to the earth. They were puffed up with their military strength, their horses, elephants, chariots, infantry, etc. He himself was not a party to the fight, or in the fight. He simply created hostility between the powerful administrators, and they fought amongst themselves. He was like the wind, which causes friction between bamboos, and so sparks a fire. Verse 35, that Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, out of his causeless mercy, appeared on this planet by his internal potency and enjoyed himself amongst competent women as if he were engaging in mundane affairs. Okay, verse 36. Although the queen's beautiful smiles and furtive glances were all spotless and exciting, and although they could conquer Cupid himself by making him give up his bow in frustration, and although even the tolerant Shiva could fall victim to them, still, despite all their magical feats and attractions, they could not agitate the senses of the Lord. Verse 37. The common materialistic conditioned souls speculate that the Lord is one of them. Out of their ignorance, they think that the Lord is affected by matter, although he is unattached. Verse 38. This is the divinity of the personality of Godhead. He is not affected by the qualities of material nature, even though he is in contact with them. Similarly, the devotees who have taken shelter of the Lord do not become influenced by the material qualities. And final verse 39, the simple and delicate women truly thought that Lord Sri Krishna, their beloved husband, followed them and was dominated by them. They were unaware of the extent of the glories of their husband, as the atheists are unaware of him as the supreme controller. So there you go, devotees. It's basically all about how when Krishna entered the palaces, because he lived in all 16,108 simultaneously. So when he entered the palaces and met with his queens, how they were moved and affected, and yes, by getting his association again. And right at the beginning of the section, he meets the mothers, including Mother Devaki. Right. Okay, so let us begin. Verse 28. After entering the house of his father, he was embraced by the mothers present, and the Lord offered his obeisances unto them by placing his feet at their head. The mothers were headed by Devaki, his real mother, so to speak. His real mother, that's like a little footnote Prabhupada's added in brackets. Interesting. Okay, so we have a purport here. Let's have a look at it. Yes. So, Prabhupada, first point, it seems that Vasudeva, the father of Krishna, had completely separate residential quarters where he lived with his 18 wives, out of whom Devaki was the real mother of Lord Krishna. But the interesting thing, such an interesting thing, that despite that, all the other ladies, older ladies, Prabhupada refers to them as stepmothers. In the verse itself, it made the point that that these were mothers, like his mothers. Swamatrabi is the Sanskrit term. Swa indicates his, directly his own. Matrabi, his mothers, plural. So they were all in that mood. Not just in that mood, but they were completely, totally, they felt themselves to be mothers of Krishna. Their affection, even though Devaki was, so to speak, the real mother, but they all the other mothers who were there felt as much affection for him as Devaki. Yes, and there's more coming up about that in the next verse, apparently. And so Krishna, in relating with them, didn't distinguish between them. He equally accepted them as his mothers, and he equally offered his obeisances unto all of those. They're the wives of Vasudeva, of course, 18 of them. So, Srila Prabhupada makes the comment that according to scripture there are 7 mothers. First is the real mother, then second is the wife of the guru, third is any wife of a Brahmin, fourth is the wife of the king, fifth is mother cow, Gomata, yes, and sixth is the nurse or nanny type, and seventh is Mother Earth. Right. So just an interesting little side point, really, is that Krishna killed Putana. And in the course of that, just a little flash of motherly feelings entered her mind. Just momentarily, maybe for a second, maybe for 2 seconds, but nothing substantial at all. And then she tried to kill Krishna, but he killed her. So Krishna, he is of such a high character. He's such a merciful person that in her case and in other cases also, he overlooked her horrible state of mind, her desire to kill him. He just forgot about that, or he didn't even notice that. But he just accepted that little motherly feeling, which was only for a second or 2, or I'm sure it wouldn't be more than that. So therefore, that's just very interesting anyway. But one of the mothers, the 6th mother, is the nurse or the nanny. And now Putana is in Goloka Vrindavan, and she is a nanny to Krishna. Yeah. So Srila Prabhupada goes on. They're all mothers. So even by this injunction, the stepmother, who's the wife of the father, is as good as the mother, because the father's one of the spiritual masters. That's interesting, isn't it? Yeah. So Srila Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, Lord Krishna, the Lord of the universe, plays the part of an ideal son just to teach others how to treat their stepmothers. How's that? Okay. Hare Krishna, excuse me, I'm yawning. Verse 29. Oops. Verse 29. The mothers, after embracing their son, sat him on their laps. Due to pure affection, milk sprang from their breasts. They were overwhelmed with delight, and the tears from their eyes wetted the Lord. Let's just read the purport. It's very short. Purport, 1 sentence. When Lord Krishna was at Vrindavan, even the cows would become moistened by affection towards him. And he would draw milk from the nipples of every affectionate living being. So what to speak of the stepmothers, who were already as good as his own mother? That's interesting. Yes. So these are ladies who are, it's very likely, or I would say it's practically inevitable, they have children of their own. Devaki's the real mother. Yeah, actually, I don't know if they have children of their own. Anyway, we can check that. But they felt towards Krishna like he was really their son. Yes. Right. So thereafter, verse 30, thereafter the Lord entered his palaces, which were perfect to the fullest extent. His wives lived in them, and they numbered over 16,000. Right, so anyway, here's the purport. And as we know, Krishna had 16,108 queens, wives, and each one of them had their own palace, fully equipped, complete with necessary compounds and gardens. So how big was Dwaraka? Whew. It's inconceivable. Must have been absolutely gigantic. Yes, okay. So in the 10th canto, there's more detailed description of these palaces, but here briefly, they're all made of marble, illuminated by jewels, decorated with curtains and carpets of velvet and silk, nicely bedecked and embroidered with gold lace. Wow, amazing. So that's a description of the living situation of Lord Krishna, that nothing at all was lacking. And Srila Prabhupada makes interesting and important point that the Lord is unlimited, and therefore his desires are also unlimited, and the supply is also unlimited. Interesting, yeah. And Prabhupada concludes the purport, everything being unlimited, it is concisely described here as sarva kamam, or full with all desirable equipment. Yes. All desirable equipment, and therefore all desires were fulfilled for those who are living there. Right. So, anyway, Krishna, amazing situation. So verse 31, the queens of Lord Sri Krishna rejoiced within their minds to see their husband home after a long period abroad. The queens got up at once from their seats and meditations. As was socially customary, they covered their faces shyly and looked about coyly. Right. So, okay. So, 16,108 queens and 16,108 palaces. And Krishna expanded himself and entered into each and every palace simultaneously and separately. And this is, Prabhupada makes the point, this is a function of his internal potency. He can expand himself in as many forms of spiritual identity as he desires, even though he is one without a second. I mean, it's really Amazing. So, Srila Prabhupada then gets into something of a discussion about these different forms, different expansions. Yeah. So we're sort of about a third of the way through the first paragraph. Prabhupada says, thus the personality of Godhead manifested himself in 16,108 plenary expansions and simultaneously entered into each and every one of the palaces of the queens. This is called Vaibhava, or the transcendental potency of the Lord. Yeah. And because Krishna is able to do these things, he's called Yogeshwar, which means the supreme mystic, supreme yogi, although people may get the wrong idea if you say just the supreme yogi. But he's definitely the supreme mystic. Very, very powerful, and with so much ability to bewilder people by his mystical powers. Right, so Prabhupada makes the point that a yogi or mystic can, or may be able to, expand himself at utmost up to tenfold, 10 forms. Yeah, tenfold expansions. But the Lord can do so to the extent of as many thousands as he likes, or even infinitely as he likes. So, the conditioned souls, of course, they're astonished when they hear this. They can't do it, of course. And when they hear that Lord Krishna did it, then they become astonished. Because, of course, they think that Lord Krishna is just one of them. An ordinary type of fellow from Chatsworth or Singapore or Bhopal, so on and so forth. That's what they think Krishna is. So when they hear these things, they just become devastated. Yes. Because they try to measure his potency, literally. They try to measure his potency, and with the idea that it's the same sort of potency that they have. Yes. So those queens were expansions of his internal potency. And thus the potent and potencies are perpetually exchanging transcendental pastimes, or exchanging transcendental pleasures known as pastimes of the Lord. So therefore, Prabhupada says, we shouldn't become astonished to learn that Krishna married so many wives and made so many palaces just like that. Not at all. For him, it's literally child's play. And Prabhupada says, on the contrary, one should understand, Prabhupada says, one should affirm that that even if the Lord marries 16,000 million wives, that he's not completely manifesting his potency. That's amazing, isn't it? Still, he's not completely exhibiting his potency. So, when he does like that, when he manifests his pastimes through his potencies, then so then he's not completely manifesting his potency. Prabhupada says he married only 16,000 wives. That's all. Just see. It's nothing. Anyway. Yeah. He could have married many more. Yes. So he did that, Prabhupada says. We're still in at the end of the first paragraph. Prabhupada says that he did that just to impress in the history of the human beings on the surface of the earth that the Lord is never equal to or less than any human being, however powerful the human being may be. So no one therefore is either equal to or greater than him. He's always great in all respects. That's the term we've mentioned it a couple of times now. Asamurdva. No one's equal to him. No one is greater than him. Right. So, but the Lord is so inspiring and just newer and newer every day and every moment that the devotees can't leave the Lord for a moment. Even the goddesses of fortune, thousands, hundreds and thousands, can't leave him for a moment. Even though by nature the goddess of fortune is Chanchal or Chanchala. Chanchal in Hindi means flickering, unsteady. Goddess of fortune's like that. She gives someone some mercy and then immediately or just very quickly she withdraws from him and he's got no more of her mercy. It's difficult for the conditioned souls who worship her. So the relationship with the Lord is so enlivening and so resourceful that no one can leave the company of the Lord once having taken shelter of him. Okay, so now the second paragraph of the purport. And Prabhupada makes an interesting point, and it's a very important point. So, he first says, oh Krishna, what have I done? Sorry. Excuse me, just a moment. Okay. Right. So, okay. Verse 33. although Lord Shri Krishna was constantly by their sides, as well as exclusively alone, his feet appeared to them to be newer and newer. The goddess of fortune, although by nature always restless, what happened? We skipped? Yeah, 32, sorry. 32. Oh, wait a minute. We skipped 31 also.
31 was not complete.
Yeah, right. Sorry, excuse me. 31. 31. 31. Oh, yeah, about Vaibhava. Sorry, I didn't know what happened there. 31, right. Yeah, okay, so the thing here skipped a page. It doesn't move line by line, it only moves page by page. So yeah, Vaibhava. They're all forms which look like the Lord. And he's Yogeshwar, the regular yogis, mystics, they can expand 10 times. Lord can do so thousands of times. Yeah, we discussed all that. Lord's never on our level, and in a certain sense, well, we're expansions of his marginal potency, so we should never equalize the potent and the potency. He's the potent, we're the potency. Although there's very little difference in quality, very little difference, Prabhupada says. So the queens are expansions of his internal potency. And in this way, in the exchanges of the queens with Lord Krishna, the potent and the potencies are perpetually exchanging transcendental pleasures, pastimes. So actually we finished pretty much the first, we finished the first paragraph, second paragraph. So, as soon as the queens saw Krishna, they arose from the slumber of meditation. It doesn't mean they were sleeping, but it means they were absorbed in thinking of Krishna. But just in meditation, and then he came. So then they came out of that state of just meditation. So Prabhupada mentions Yajnavalkya's religious injunctions. A woman whose husband is away from home shouldn't take part in any social functions or decorate herself, not laugh, not go to any relative's house in any circumstance. This is the vow of ladies whose husbands are away from home. But at the same time, it's enjoined, a wife should never present herself before the husband in an unclean state. She must always be well-dressed, nicely ornamented, and in a happy and joyous mood. Yes. So they were meditating on him. It sounds like they were also in that sort of state. Because the Lord's devotees can't live for a moment without thinking about him, and what to speak about the queens, because they're all goddesses of fortune. They can't be separated from the Lord. And Srila Prabhupada gives an explanation about the gopis. Couldn't forget Krishna, even when he was just out for some hours during the day herding the cows. They used to worry about him whether his feet would get hurt on the rocks and thorns out in the forests and on Govardhan Hill. So the pure devotees then, Prabhupada says, they're always in trance like this. And while Krishna was away, the queens were always in trance of meditation. It's referred to as the slumber of meditation, but it's just sort of allegorical expression. Right. So, but now seeing the Lord coming, they gave up all their activity, their trance-like state. So they immediately gave up all the vows which we just mentioned from Yajnavalkya, which they were following, of not dressing nicely, not going in public, etc. They gave all that up as soon as they saw Krishna. So Srila Prabhupada refers to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. Let's just read what he says. It's interesting. First of all, rising from their seats, although they wanted to see their husband, they were deterred because of feminine shyness. But due to strong ecstasy, they overcame that stage of weakness and became caught up with the idea of embracing the Lord. And this thought factually made them unconscious of their surrounding environment. This prime state of ecstasy annihilated all other formalities and social conventions, and thus they escaped all stumbling blocks on the path of meeting the Lord. And that is the perfect stage of meeting the Lord of the soul, Sri Krishna. Okay. So, they wanted to see Krishna, but because of their shyness, which is mentioned, they sort of held back. But then, because of the ecstasy of seeing him, they overcame that stage of weakness and then got into embracing the Lord. Yeah. So like this great ecstasy annihilated all formalities and social conventions. And thus they escaped all the stumbling blocks on the path of meeting him, and they just went and met him. And okay, so verse 32. Sorry, I got mixed up there. Anyway. But we're back on track. The insuperable ecstasy was so strong that the queens who were shy first embraced the Lord in the innermost recesses of their hearts. Then they embraced him visually. And then they sent their sons to embrace him, which is equal to personal embracing. That's a note by Prabhupada. But, O chief amongst the Brigus, though they tried to restrain their feelings, they inadvertently shed tears. So Prabhupada begins the purport by saying that although, because of their feminine shyness, there were hindrances in regard to embracing Krishna, but they did that in these different ways, seeing him, placing him in the cause of their hearts, sending their children to embrace him. So But still the act of embracing remained unfinished. And so they started crying, despite trying to stop themselves from crying. So Prabhupada explains that the son, sending the son to embrace the husband, is indirect embracing. But the particular significance of it, importance of it, is the son is developed as part of the mother's body. So therefore, it can be understood in a certain sense as the wife embracing the husband. And, Prabhupada makes the point that it's that sort of embrace by the son is not the sexual type of embrace of a husband and wife, but it gives satisfaction from the point of view of affection, of real love, deeper feelings, not just some physical attraction. But then the embrace of the eyes, is more effective in the conjugal relation, and thus, according to Srila Jiva Goswami, there's nothing wrong in such an exchange of feeling between husband and son. Okay, now on to verse 33. Although Lord Shri Krishna was constantly by their sides, as well as exclusively alone, his feet appeared to them to be newer and newer. The goddess of fortune, although by nature always restless and moving, could not quit the Lord's feet. So what woman can be detached from those feet, having once taken shelter of them? All right, so there are 3 paragraphs here in the purport. Everyone, no, not everyone, but so many conditioned souls are just really after the favor of the goddess of fortune. But the problem is she's chanchala. She moves here and there. And therefore, people on the material level cannot get the permanent blessings of the goddess of fortune. It's all temporary. Here today, gone tomorrow. Yeah, and Prabhupada gives the example that how many empires, kings and so on there have been. They've all come and gone. There was the Greek Empire, the Roman Empire. Then there was like the Spanish and the French and the Dutch and, of course, the British particularly, perhaps. They had their empires over, a few hundred years ago. But where is the Dutch Empire? Where is the Dutch Empire? It's just not. But they used to have Indonesia. All of Indonesia was Dutch. Yeah. And they also had New Zealand. Therefore it's called New Zealand, because Zealand is a part of Holland. Yes, it's part of Holland. So this is New Zealand. Just like New York is named after York in England. It's a city, but it's New York. So all these empires have come and gone now. The Americans, they have a sort of an economic empire, but it's in great danger at the moment. I mean, it's difficult. So yes, so that's all to do with the flickering nature of the goddess of fortune. But as Brahma Samhita explains, Prabhupada points out in the first paragraph, the Lord is served very respectfully by hundreds and thousands of goddesses of fortune. And they're always with the Lord. They're not here, then they're suddenly gone. They're always with the Lord because the Lord's association is just so amazing. Yeah, they can't give him up. Although by nature they're very restless. So, the spiritual relation with the Lord is so enlivening and resourceful that no one can leave the company of the Lord once having taken shelter of him. Yeah. So one thing is, if someone wants the mercy of the goddess of fortune, then one should worship her husband. Yeah. Because she's never separated from her husband. Inseparable. So if you want the mercy of the goddess of fortune, take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And then she'll always be with you. Or at least as much as Krishna feels is suitable, which may not be always also. So the second paragraph, here we go. Interesting statement. The living entities, that's us, we are feminine by nature. The male or the enjoyer is the Lord, the Purusha. The male, Purusha also means the enjoyer. That's Krishna. And all of his different potencies, they're feminine. At least in terms of, what would you say? In principle. Feminine in the sense that they are to be enjoyed by him. He's the enjoyer. All the potencies, whatever they are there. They exist for giving enjoyment to the Lord. Yes. So, whether it's para-prakriti, superior energy, apara-prakriti, inferior potency, Prabhupada says, such potencies are always employed for the satisfaction of the employer or the enjoyer. That's Krishna, as stated in Bhagavad Gita 5:29. Bhoktaram yagya tapasam. Bhoktaram means the enjoyer. Bhokta. Yagya tapasam. Krishna says, I'm the enjoyer of all sacrifices and austerities. But, Prabhupada concludes that purport, the potencies, therefore, when engaged directly in the service of the Lord, revive the natural color, and thus there's no disparity in the relation of the potent and potency. Okay. Right, so, third paragraph. So people, Prabhupada makes the point, people in service or people who are working, they would really like to get a post under the government because, at least traditionally, it's more secure, it's very secure. Get a job with the government, that's it, you're made for the rest of your life. So seeing the Lord is the supreme enjoyer or the supreme government, the supreme governor, then we should be employed by him. We should try to give him pleasure We should try to be enjoyed by him. Yeah. And then once we do that, then Prabhupada makes the point, no living being wishes to be relieved from that engagement. Yeah. So the highest perfection of life is to be employed by the Lord on a no payment basis, just serving. Yeah. That, Prabhupada says, that will make one extremely happy. One need not seek the moving goddess of fortune without the relation of the Lord. Okay, so on we go to verse 34. Right. The Lord was pacified after killing those kings who were burdensome to the earth. They were puffed up with their military strength, their horses, elephants, chariots, infantry, etc. He himself was not a party in the fight. He simply created hostility between the powerful administrators, and they fought amongst themselves. He was like the wind, which causes friction between bamboos, and so sparks a fire. So this, devotees, there's an analogy here that Krishna, the Lord, was like the wind which causes friction between bamboos and so sparks a fire. That's an analogy. Official analogy. So please make a note of that. Right, okay, so Prabhupada in the purport makes the point that we're not factual enjoyers. We would love to be, we think we are, we think we should be, but by nature we're not. And therefore, when we become false enjoyers and try to enjoy under the dictates of material nature, we fail. We fail, really. The Lord is the proprietor and the enjoyer. So, yeah. But still, the conditioned souls do their best, delude the deluded living being, puffed up by a false sense of becoming God, increases his material strength by so many activities, and thus becomes the burden of the earth. Oh boy, some of these heads of state, they're just burdens to the whole population, just messing up things for so many other people. Right, yeah. And it reaches the point, Prabhupada says, the earth becomes completely uninhabitable by the sane. It could become uninhabitable in general also, but certainly by the sane. Who would want to live in that sort of situation? Like I thought, for what it's worth, I've thought on a number of occasions, actually, in the last couple of years. If I was invited to go and live in America, not really, but possibly, if I was invited just to visit, I might refuse. Definitely, if I was invited to live, I would definitely refuse. Because it's just, Kali Yuga's too strong. Right then, so this is called Dharmasya Glani, as Krishna uses the term, Bhagavad Gita 7. what is it? Dharmasya Glani Abhavati. 7:14, no it's not, is it? Anyway, Dharmasya Glani, misuse of the energy of the human being. So when all this misuse is going on of the energy of the Lord, then the sane people, the saner people, become disturbed by the unpleasant situation created by the vicious administrators who are simply burdens of the earth. And then the Lord may appear, at least from time to time. Right. All right, so let's see. The Lord, if he doesn't appear, he makes arrangements for the saner people to be delivered and protected generally, yeah. So, okay. So he doesn't, all these nonsense administrators, the Lord doesn't favor any side of them, although they may like to think that he does or he will or he should or something of that sort. But what he does, as the verse says, he creates hostility. And again, this analogy which we've mentioned, which is in the verse, the analogy is repeated, how the rubbing of bamboos creates friction in the forest and the fire starts somehow by the force of the air. So even though the Lord didn't take part in the Battle of Kurukshetra or the Second World War or any of these wars, but still, yeah, he gets these people fighting with each other, even though he doesn't really involve himself directly. So this is going on. The history of the world shows this so many times, and it's going to continue till everyone takes shelter of the Lord, till the living beings are attached to the service of the Lord. So Prabhupada then refers to 7:14, how this Maya is his potency. 7:14 here, Daiviyesha Gunamayi Mama Maya Dharachya Mameviye Prapajante Maya Metam Tarantite. This divine energy of mine, material energy, is very difficult to overcome. But one who takes shelter of me can easily cross beyond it. Right. So in other words, no one can make peace in this world, establish peace and prosperity by just fruit of activity and speculation. The only way to do that is to surrender to the Lord. And then, then we have a second paragraph. So unfortunately, these people can't surrender. These people who are engaged in destructive activity, they can't surrender. They're fools of the first order, lowest of mankind, robbed of their knowledge, although apparently they seem to be academically educated. They're demons. They're really demons. Yeah. So, Prabhupada, about halfway through the paragraph there, he says, these are the lowest of human beings. I mean, he's particularly talking about the Naradamas. They're the four categories of people who won't surrender to the Lord. The Mudhas, the fools, the Naradamas, the exploiters, the demons, the abusers, then those who are materialistic intellectuals, and then those who are just blatant atheists. Yes. So these lowest amongst mankind, the Naradamas, who are trying to control the world and exploit the world for themselves, they miss the point that human life is for re-establishing our relationship with the Lord. They miss the opportunity because they're engaged in material activities, robbed of their knowledge because of so much speculation. So they can't come to the point of knowing the Lord. And they're all demons. All of them are men of demoniac principle, and they suffer the consequences, as did such materialistic heroes. Prabhupada's being sarcastic. Materialistic heroes, such as Ravana, Hiranyakashipu, Kamsa, and others. Right, okay, so let's do verse 35. We're not going to finish this chapter today. That's not a problem. We have time. That Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, out of his causeless mercy, appeared on this planet by his internal potency and enjoyed himself amongst competent women as if he were engaged in mundane affairs. Right. Yeah, so Prabhupada explains in purport, the Lord married and lived like a householder, but not with sexual relationships. Yeah, he lived with them separately. Yeah, looks like a mundane situation, but it's not. His behavior, Prabhupada says, his behavior with his wives, his queens, is never to be understood as mundane sex relation. His wives were not ordinary women, because to get the Lord as your husband, you got to do many, many millions of births of austerity. Boy, oh boy. And the Lord comes, shows his pastimes to attract the conditioned souls. Come back, become my servants, and ultimately in a relationship of servitude or friendship or parenthood or even a conjugal relationship. Yes, get into it. You can do it. Yeah, where the Lord reciprocates such exchanges of service. So these services are pervertedly reflected in material life. Yes, these different services, being a servant, being a friend, being a parent, or something parental type or conjugal, they're pervertedly represented in the material world. And when such relationships happen in this world, then they become broken after a while. Necessarily, those relationships, the mundane versions of these spiritual relationships with the Lord, the mundane versions, suddenly they become broken, untimely. Yeah. And everyone is fried. Sad experience. So, yeah. Everyone's conditioned here, therefore all the relationships are temporary and full of inebrities. Just all sorts of problems and things going wrong and defects. Yeah. They certainly can't help us become happy perpetually. But if we develop such a relationship with the Lord, then we go to the kingdom of God and have such a relationship eternally with Him. And Prabhupada says those women that Krishna was living with, the queens, they they're not therefore women of this material world. Yeah. But they got that position due to so much devotional service. Yeah. And Prabhupada makes the point, we can, jivas can, go to any place in the material world. It's possible to go, not just around this planet. People can go and try to enjoy on other planets. Yeah. So, anyway, now you get, there's quite a bit of talk about going to the moon again. What is it? More than 50 years later, isn't it? It was 69, I think. Anyway, 50 years plus or minus later, they're going to go again. Why didn't they go more if it's such a great thing? Yeah, it's because it's tough. It's really tough there. I mean, at least according to their understanding, it's really tough. So Krishna, so this is these are the activities of the mundaners trying to enjoy in this world somehow or other. But then, as a person comes to his or her senses, then they try for Brahman happiness, then for Paramatma happiness, but ultimately, if they're fortunate, they get devotional service. Yeah. And they get the association of the Lord, who's not impersonal. He's exactly like us and has all of our propensities in full. He marries like regular humans, but his marriage is neither mundane nor limited as our people's marriages are limited. Yes. And Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, his wives therefore appear like mundane women, but factually they're all transcendental liberated souls, perfect manifestations of internal energy. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Oh yes, sorry, devotees. One thing, very important, please listen very carefully. We are studying Srimad Bhagavatam. We all know that very well. And it's really very powerful thing, very amazing experience. But are you aware it is now the Bhadra Purnima is coming up. The next Purnima is the 10th. Yes, on the 10th. That's the Bhadra Purnima. And anyone who gives a set of Bhagavatam to someone else on that day goes back to Godhead. So all over the world, the devotees are trying to distribute sets of Srimad Bhagavatam, including in Africa. Yes. So please, this is my appeal to you. We are studying Bhagavatam now, benefiting from it. Please try to distribute it. If you don't have a set of your own, please, this is the time to get a set of your own, because they're available for a discounted price. To be completely honest with you, I don't know exactly, but I heard that instead of around 4,000 rands, they're now going to be, just for these up till the 10th, 3,500. That's right. Yeah, so that's, it's a great opportunity. And if you can, if you've already got a set, please get a set, buy a set, and give it to some family members, friends, neighbors, like this. Give a set. Yes. So please make a point of doing that. I think it's important that you do that, because you're all students, you're all servants of Srimad Bhagavatam. Right now, special position. So please get yourselves together before the 10th and either get a set for yourself, or get a set, or get two. Or, if you can afford to get 2 or 3 sets, and give them to suitable candidates. Please do that. And I will be checking with you next week to find out how it's going. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.